I am on a quest. I want to find out how to make software and hardware perform at their peak. I want to know how to make applications faster and more efficient. And while I'm at it, I want to have a little fun. Don't think I can do it? Just watch me. I'm Scott Moore, and this is the Performance Tour.
Hey, it's time again for another episode of the Performance Tour. This time we're going to be talking about how to develop strong DevOps teams and site reliability engineers in your organization. Before we do, let's talk about the travels thus far for the tour. So we left Florida and we're on our way to Las Vegas to the Dynatrace Perform 2023 conference. We made several stops along the way, including Orange Beach, Alabama, Lafayette, Louisiana, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, where we found a great barbecue spot called 407 Barbecue. Check that out. After Dallas, Fort Worth, we made our way through Amarillo, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and on the way to Flagstaff, the weather decided to get rough and the tiny truck was rocked. So even though we weren't able to make it to Dynatrace Perform in Vegas, my good friend Hendrik Rexed was able to take this footage of what was going on the showroom floor, so check that out. Our sponsor, Tricentis, was also at the conference with their own booth talking about how Neoload, the load testing product from Tricentis, works hand in hand with Dynatrace, the observability platform, in a bi-directional way to make performance a 360-degree continuous activity. So not being able to go to Vegas, we re-diverted our path back through Amarillo, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Arkansas, before finally getting back to Nashville, Tennessee, one of my favorite towns, to sit down with my good friend Brian Dougherty to discuss how you can build a strong DevOps team with good site reliability engineers that have been qualified to do the job and know what their job should be. I think you'll find this conversation interesting.
Welcome everybody to the Performance Tour. It's time for another episode and we're talking with Brian Dougherty. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
Brian, I've known you for a few years, but our audience might not. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure, my name's Brian Dougherty. I'm the VP of Engineering at Snapped, which is a SaaS-based fraud detection company based out of California, but is remotely distributed across the country.
Now, I know you've got a lot of experience at the decision maker and executive level, and you've managed a lot of systems engineering teams, software engineering team. Why don't you talk a little bit about what it's like to manage a technical team like that and what it takes to find and hire the right people for those positions?
Absolutely. So, the first thing I did when I came into Snapped, where the engineering team had mostly been outsourced, and there was this desire to really build out not just an engineering team, but a fully internal IT department, was to go through and really figure out what is our IT organization going to look like. And so initially it's figuring out what are our functional areas. And I know there's pros and cons to a functional organization. Functionally, it's very, you can get a lot of benefit from having people aligned within the different functions. The thing you got to fight against is there being siloed communication. So you really got to specify and make sure you're looking for the right people to hire that can overcome that boundary. So first thing is building out how you want your organization to be structured. For Snapped, we went with a product focus, a software engineering focus, a data technology focus, a cloud engineering focus, an information security focus, and then an IT operations focus, okay? And that kind of lets you go like, all right, you take the big problem of building an IT organization to, all right, these are our centers of excellence. Now they're down to 6 smaller problems, still big ones, but smaller, that you can attack. And that cloud engineering, that reliability engineering, that DevOps component is one of the critical ones that often gets overlooked. So that's a place we've definitely focused.
As we've moved from, let's say, into Agile and into DevOps and then different mindsets, the way we build software, the way we work on software has changed significantly. And now we've got SREs, we've got SDETs, we've got different acronyms that we work with today, especially in DevOps. Can you talk about how that has changed when you're talking about hiring these people, making sure that they are placed in the right place and what they're doing is the right thing?
Yeah, I think there's there was a really big misunderstanding around cloud engineering, reliability engineering, DevOps that is slowly being eradicated, right? And I think at the big corporate level, there was this thought that, okay, this is all about reliability, performance monitoring, making sure things stay up. So what is it? Well, these are the people that we go to when something goes down, right? So it became much more of a risk mitigation piece, right? Which is why, when I interview SDETs or SREs or cloud engineering architects, the first question is always, when am I expected to be on call? How much is that? Because it's been abused, right? Yeah. Rather than being viewed as a value creation, right? And an area that can give lift to everybody on the engineering side, on the testing side, on the product side. There's this misconception that's these guys are responsible for making sure things remain functional, and that's bull, right? The intent of SRE and DevOps is not just to make sure things work, it's to make sure that everybody can deploy things quickly, that we are positive that the performance is strong, that we identify the opportunities for increasing the performance, providing a better user experience, and basically, saving all the heartache and frustration of doing things in a slow, esoteric way across the board in testing, in development, right? It's not just the place you go and throw, all right, better make sure this server stays up or this environment stays sound. And, that's been very beneficial to our hiring since, our cloud engineering team has that mindset, and we built our teams in such a way that it is a center of excellence that supports the development. It isn't just there to make sure the systems function. Mm-hmm. And that's allowed us to really go after some very strong talent. So I think it's one of the things that differentiate us.
Here's a topic that keeps coming up over and over more and more recently about cognitive overload and the fatigue that happens with developers by, I think maybe people are thinking it's a mistake that we gave developers all this capability of not only developing their software, but controlling their environment, spinning up their own environments, and you handle everything now, and we'll just sit back and wait for you to develop features and functions. But then SREs being on call and becoming more of this third level support center that's working in war rooms to fix problems all the time. And we're seeing all this fatigue from that. So people are burning out. How do you deal with that?
Totally. So, it comes back to what are people signing up for, and are they aware of that, right? This is going to shock you. Software developers generally like to develop software, right? So, these are your guys that want to come up with software-based solutions. They want to do the design of it. They want to do the actual coding of it, right? Yes. Do they have the aptitude to do some of these other things? Sure, right? The problem is, this isn't why they get out of bed in the morning, right? The guys that are cloud engineering focused, DevOps focused, these are the most passionate individuals you will ever see, in my opinion, about such a small slither of tech, right? And so these guys are going to seek out the best practices. They're going to come up with the smartest ways to do things, the most reliable ways to do things, the most performant ways to do things. And, the way we built our structure is they can take and build out those patterns that allow the engineers, the developers, to apply them, but the engineers aren't responsible for figuring out the best way to do all of it, right? They're given the recipe to go and, allow them to get their software deployed, make sure it integrates well, make sure that their tests run and they run reliably and they report it, right? But they don't have to go figure out all the best ways to do it, because, cloud engineering is one of the areas that's moving faster than, just about anything. Only AI and machine learning are really in the same ballpark of how quickly things are evolving. So Having those individuals that are staying on the cutting edge to see what the latest frameworks, the latest patterns, the latest techniques, right, the latest tools are that can be used to give that lift across the organization, that's a full-time job, right? I don't care how big or small your system is.
When you're hiring for these folks, how big of an emphasis is performance? Because I know everything's important. It's got to be created. It has to function. It has to work. It has to be secure. It has to be performant. But where does that play? Does it sit on the big boys table, or is it on the side somewhere?
The people that are really good about this, right, at cloud engineering and DevOps, at that whole world, right, are super passionate about it, right? And it's not only if I talk to one of them and they only talked about one piece of it, it'd be like, okay, this is like a sysadmin that like knows a little bit about this side. This isn't a cloud engineer, right? The good ones, they're going to tell you, I want this system to work as well as freaking possible, right? I want it to optimize its potential, right? Cool, what does that mean? It's like, well, it's gotta be up, right? It's gotta stay up. It's gotta be fault tolerant. It's got to be resilient. It's got to be performant. It's got to be secure, right? And they look at it from all of those angles. And if you like to pry them a little bit, like, cool, if you're going to focus on one of them and ignore the rest of them, where would you go, right? And the good ones go, you can't just, it's like building a table with one leg, right? Like, it doesn't work.
But can you be good at all of those things? Like, can a cloud engineer be as good at performance and security and whatever? Don't you think there's a specialty involved in this?
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, and that's why you have teams, right? If you're going to build it and say, we're going to completely build out and have one individual that's so good, they're going to cover everything, right? All of our cloud-based infrastructure, all of our performance, all of our security, all of our monitoring, like all of our reliability, that's silly, right? You want to have an individual that understands all of that, right? That's passionate about all of that and can do a part of it. But there does need to be specializations around the other areas of it. It's too much for one person to bite off, because if they do, what happens is you get this cyclical, all right, right now we're going to focus on this for a month or 3 months. All right, cool. Now performance is starting to drag. Let's go look at performance. And it becomes much more reactive rather than having people that can focus on it. So, you're shifting it left and they're getting out ahead of it. So,
and that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, where does continuous performance come into play? Because everything's now in a pipeline, and we started out with functionality and initial testing in a pipeline, but now we need to throw performance in there as well. Do you think that's a huge challenge for organizations, or is it just because I don't see a whole lot of people doing that versus just the functionality testing? Like we do some automation, we verify that things are working. Okay, it eventually makes it out to production, or we do blue green, whatever.
Right.
But where does continuous performance play a role in organizations? How early do you see that happening? Like, sure. I would say day one, it needs to be part of it, but is it a phased kind of approach, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it comes down to, what your domain is and what kind of product you're building, right? Like, if you're doing a highly transactional system, it's definitely day one, right? If you're doing something that is, has a tremendous amount of load or has the potential to grow to a tremendous amount of load, then it's 100% day one, right? If you're in other areas where you're like, okay, this system, its max load is going to be, if, it's a grand slam is going to be 20,000 daily active users, right? That's doing very low computational things, right? It's not as critical, right? However, even in those scenarios, you want to have something happening in your end, because even at small load, even at small transactions, there's always an opportunity for stupid code to get in there, right? And being able to have some type of, whether it's performance testing as a leading indicator of an issue, at a bare minimum, you got to have some level of application performance monitoring, right? So that's kind of like the poor man's way of doing it, I guess, right? So there's ways to get around it based on your domain, but definitely if your user experience is going to be to a lot of folks and it's highly transactional, then 100%, you got to build that in from day one, because you don't know where the breaking point is, right? And you don't want to be in that spot where, you actually get market fit and widespread adoption and you have that exponential growth and you all of a sudden realize, oh crap, this only can handle, 10,000 users and we just went to 500,000. What do we do? Sure, sometimes it's deploy more servers, but that's generally an expensive and, silly way to do it.
One of the reasons why I had you on here is because I know your expertise is in hiring a strong DevOps team. So for everybody out there, what's the secret sauce to that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is making sure when you speak to cloud engineers that it's clear why you feel your company needs it, right? There's a very clear of, this is the problems we're trying to solve as a company, and this is where we think cloud engineering and DevOps can help. Because so often these folks are used to hearing some guy comes in and says, hey, we need DevOps. And it's like, cool, why do you need DevOps? Because I read a LinkedIn blog that said DevOps is cool, or cloud engineering
Everybody
is cool.
else is doing it.
Right, everybody else is doing DevOps. So, my CTO said, where's our DevOps? Cool, I'll go buy some DevOps, right? So really being able to have that understanding of like can fit, where cloud engineering can fit and help, and really making sure that you as a hiring manager know where they fit in, how that aligns with what the company is trying to do. That takes it from being like, okay, this is a cool place where I can go and flex my DevOps chops, and they've got the tools I need and I can have fun because I enjoy the work, to take it to the next level of, oh crap, my work is going to matter, right? Like the company is going to benefit, I'm going to benefit. And that jump is something that a lot of companies fail to do in the hiring process. So you take folks that are that are already excited about what they're doing and put them, from a skill set and a day-to-day work thing, and then you add this amazing wrapper of like, people are going to care, right? This isn't just, for the sake of DevOps. This is for the sake of making our company more successful, and this is where it fits in, right? Now you got people, the right ones, they're going to go, oh man, this is cool. I've never really been aligned with a company like this before. And that gets them excited to come to work, not just because they're doing DevOps, but where DevOps can actually, benefit those around them. And that's exponentiated joy. So that's my big secret on it when it comes to hiring this kind of stuff.
The way you say it, I would be excited about working on a team like that. I want to come work for you now.
Oh, dude, yeah, anytime, man. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, and maybe we'll have you on again.
Yeah, appreciate it, bro. Yep.
So what a great conversation with Brian. Thanks for being on the show. I hope that you enjoyed it. I also have to give a shout out to Flora and Fauna Coffee in Nashville, Tennessee, who kept us going with their wonderful brew there, and we'll be back to sample more of that, I'm sure, in the near future. So we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, Austin, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, and many other towns throughout this year. I hope you'll keep watching the show, watching the interviews, and don't miss the parodies that are coming out this year as well. I think you'll laugh a lot. I sure did. So for the Performance Tour, this episode, this is Scott Moore. We'll see ya on the road.
Oh, hey there. How you doing, darling? Just enjoying my Alaskan polar bear. Yeah, this is a song I wrote just for you. It's an ode to my friend Buddy Love. I like to call him Buddy Load. Instead of that old Black Magic, it's that old Down website. And it goes something like this.